Chapter 7. The Carew Murder Case. It was nearly a year later that all of London was shocked by a hateful and horrible crime. Mr. Danvers Carew, a well-known politician, was murdered. The details were few and startling. A maid in Dr. Jekyll's house had gone to bed about 11 o'clock. Her room overlooked an alley that was brilliantly lit by a full moon. She sat at the window for some time, looking over the beautiful scene. Later, she told the police that it was the most peaceful night she had ever experienced, until she saw two men in the alley. The maid noticed an old man walking through the alley first. He was a well-dressed man and had beautiful mane of white hair. She could see his face clearly in the bright moonlight. She thought he looked handsome and kind. Then she saw another man walking toward him. The second man was small and wore a heavy coat and dark hat. As they approached one another, the older man bowed to the second man. The maid thought that the older man was asking for directions. The old man held up a piece of paper and pointed down the alley. As she could see his face clearly, she knew he was calm and rather jolly. He even laughed. Then she noticed the face of Mr. Hyde. She recognized him as the sometime visitor of her master. Hyde held a heavy cane in his hand. He was swinging it by his side. All of a sudden, Hyde raised the cane above his head, and the older gentleman took a step back, but it did not help. The maid watched in horror as Hyde swung the cane. The older gentleman fell to the ground. The maid fainted. When she woke up several hours later, she ran to the police to report the murder. They responded at once. At first they did not know the victim's name, but they discovered a letter on his body. It was addressed to Mr. Utterson. The lawyer was awoken from his bed in the middle of the night to identify the body. He went with the police to the hospital where the body was waiting. His first thought was that Dr. Jekyll had been killed. He was very nervous and frightened for his friend. It took a great deal of courage for the lawyer to look at the body. He did not know what he would do if it was Jekyll. "I recognize him," Utterson said. "I'm sorry to say that this is Sir Danvers Carew." "No." "This case will be in all the morning papers," the police officer said. He shook his head in amazement. "Sir, we are also hoping you will have some knowledge of the criminal." The police then told him the maid's story of Mr. Hyde beating Carew with a cane. Mr. Utterson was taken aback. "Hyde, did you say?" He was shocked that Hyde would have a connection with someone else he knew, especially Sir Danvers Carew. He had been prepared for Hyde to have hurt, even killed Dr. Jekyll, but not Carew. Utterson wondered if anyone was safe from Mr. Hyde. The lawyer looked quite ill. "Yes, sir," the police officer said. "He used this cane as a murder weapon." The officer passed the walking stick to Utterson. The lawyer gasped. He recognized it as a gift he had given to Dr. Jekyll several years before. Jekyll must have given it to Hyde, or Hyde had stolen it. Utterson did not mention this fact to the police. He knew that he was hiding evidence, but he was concerned for his friend. He wanted to talk to Jekyll first. It was a more important matter at the moment, though. Hyde must be found and arrested. Utterson knew where to look. The lawyer still had the strange man's card in his wallet. "You'll come with me?" Utterson said, shaking his head sadly. "I can take you to Mr. Hyde's apartment."